we could do like a merch. A CineCasters
I want to do merch.
You could get your own 3D printed head for each Cinemaster.
I want to do shirts that have like 2 different shirts. I want to do the one that has like our heads on them.
Yeah.
And then underneath says Cinemasters.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like just on the front, and I want to get another shirt that just a black shirt in like fancy script that just says "This should have been a TV show."
I like that. That's good.
But I also don't know who would buy them.
Welcome. You are entering into a strange dimension. A dimension where narratives from across space and time come together. Narratives that could have, might have, or should have been all exist here in one space. This is CineMasters Ultimate Timeline.
Welcome back to CineMasters. This is a show where we watch movies and then pitch them back to each other to try to make them flow in a more cohesive way or change them up because we disagreed with their fundamental philosophies or simply because we didn't like the way one character's face was arranged. My name is Andrew, and today I'm joined by my good friend Nate.
Hi. You're not referring to Skeletor, not Skeletor.
No,
in this week's episode.
I simply, I don't know where that came from, their face being arranged.
I was like, whose face is he talking about?
I don't know whose face I was talking about there, but clearly I have some unresolved father issues with this movie. But
clearly, yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
Today we're talking about the Black Cauldron. I was about to say the Sword in the Stone.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I guess the main guy kind of looks like
he
the
looks
kid from
exactly the same. That's one of the points I wrote down. He looks like Arthur.
That's so funny. I completely forgot that was a movie I could have compared it to.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're absolutely right.
So the Black Cauldron is the movie we're doing, and it is
1985.
1985. Yeah, but it certainly is a thing. Like, this movie is a flop. It was a flop.
Yeah. Yeah. It did not make back its money at the time, if ever.
It definitely did not make back its money, and it was a total and I can see why. Is it as bad as I think people think? I don't think so. Like, I mean, I guess people are always like, oh, this is like the black sheep. It's often considered like the movie that almost killed Disney animation.
Oh, okay. I did not know it was that bad.
Yeah. So this is the movie that almost killed it. So after this movie, they had like Oliver and Friends, and that was like it until 1989 when The Little Mermaid came out.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But this is the movie
I did not realize, but that makes sense. Yeah, because I know there was a slump somewhere in there, so that was around this time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 1985, 86, I think it got pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
July 26th,
yeah, all I know, the little bit of trivia I know from this movie is that Tim Burton was one of the original concept designers, and I think he got fired because they didn't like where he was taking it. Yeah, something like that, yeah. I actually found some concept art that he did today. I did a tiny bit of research on it, but I found some of his original concept art, which I thought was it's obviously it's interesting looking at that because it's very much like a Nightmare Before Christmas. I wonder if working on this, he came up with some things.
Well, this was before Nightmare,
because some of the design came. Well, exactly. If some of the work he did on this was influential on Nightmare, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
It is interesting.
Or maybe the work that he did on Nightmare, or the work that he did here when they were doing Nightmare, or maybe he pitched Nightmare to Disney or whatever, how that worked, because he didn't direct Nightmare. He just produced it.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Even though it's called Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Which is very interesting, yeah.
There's a whole thing going on there. But this movie is... it's weird. On one hand, I really liked the animation. I thought the animation was pretty expressive.
I loved the way it looked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
not so much the animation for me, but the design. I liked the design.
Well, I will say, Princess Eilonwy, her hair I thought was like, oh, whoa, when she moves, her hair moves and it feels alive. Like it flops around in a bit of that like early animation kind of way, but it has a fluidity to it that was really really interesting. Like it has a fluidity that feels really real in a way that like if you go back to like Aurora, her hair moved, but it moved in like separate strands. Like they almost look like locks. Or in like Snow White's hair didn't move at all.
Right.
Like a static blob. But this, I was like, oh, yo, their hair moves, like their clothing moves, and like and like there's some water and lighting and fluid dynamics and air dynamics. Well, I guess that's fluid dynamics. Fire and mist and whatnot. That feels really. I was like, yo, this is pretty cool. And the effects are cool too. When the glowy star sword lights up. I was like, and it like breaks things. It's like, yo, this feels powerful or impactful, but the story is a goddamn mess.
Yeah, I would agree.
Before we get into likes and dislikes, I will say that.
Okay, yeah, sure, go ahead.
That this movie, The Black Cauldron, is a culmination of actually 2 books. It's trying to tell 2 books. It's based on a novel series called The Chronicles of Prydian by Lloyd Alexander, not to be confused by Alexander Lloyd. Isn't that the guy who plays Doc? What's his name?
No, that's Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd. Oh, never mind then. Lloyd Alexander. These 2 books were the first 2 in the Chronicles of Prydian. Let me just see if I can find it here. The first 2, I don't have it here. But the first 2 were the story of 3 or something like that, and then this one, The Black Cauldron, and it tells the story across 2 books of Terran, and then them destroying the Black Cauldron, and actually there's the Horned King actually works for an even eviler god or lord named Aaron.
Okay. Interesting. So he's like the Sauron to the Morgoth.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's like the Saruman to the Sauron, but yeah, probably more like Sauron to the Morgoth. Yeah, like but I just want to say that because like I do think that this was a very different way to go for Disney, to be like, oh, let's adapt a book, not a fairy tale. Let's adapt a book series. And instead of, so different from nowadays where they're like, oh, this series has 4 books, let's turn them into 5 movies. This was like, no, we're going to do the first 2 movies in one go. First 2 books in one movie. Yeah. I just thought that was really interesting. But yeah, this movie...
That is interesting.
This movie didn't get released on home video until 1998 because people were like, it's so... blah.
Right. Nobody wanted to watch it that bad. Really?
Apparently it did well in France, though.
Yes.
Yeah. So likes and dislikes.
Likes. I loved the design. I liked the way it looked. I really liked the way it looked. Pulling up my list here because
you can't.
I thought the Horned King. I thought he was a genuinely creepy, evil character, and I love like John Hurt really brought that.
Yeah,
character
John
to
Hurt
life.
is spectacular.
Yeah, but yeah, I like the kind of the dark gothic style to it. I liked that it was willing to go in that direction. That's it. Yeah, that's it for me.
I felt like this movie might have really benefited from a repitch. Like, this is, having watched this movie and just thinking about it out loud now, I'm going, this movie, if it was rated PG and was an animated movie, it wasn't released for children, but was released for people like teenage years, and they went like, oh, we're going to tell this epic fantasy tale that's animated, and it's gonna, and the story was like updated, and it was creepy, but it's still animated, and it's going to be a badass tale about a hero. I'd be like, yeah, man, I'm all for this. Like, I'm all for that. That sounds great. I don't know if I think this problem is that they wanted this movie to be for children and animated it thusly, when it feels like this probably wasn't intended for children.
No, it's so strange. So I actually did read. There's an article I read that was pretty funny. It kept every time it referred to the Horned King, it put Skeletor and then crossed it out and then said the Horned King.
Skeletor!
Exactly. He looks like Skeletor.
It doesn't sound like Skeletor.
But it talks about... It does not sound like Skeletor at all.
Bring me the black cauldron!
Can you imagine? Wow, that would be great.
Do you want me to just overdub the entirety of this movie?
Yeah, I think you should. Do it as a CineMaster special. All the scenes in the Black Cauldron, but with Skeletor.
What was Skeletor?
There's like failed Skeletor audition for the Horned King and the Black Cauldron.
Maybe I'll do that. Just like a Skeletor... Skeletor auditions for the role of the Horned King.
Yeah. Anyway, there was apparently some, like, they had the departments that weren't really talking together. It was a lot more compartmentalized, the production on it. So there's a lot of things that just people weren't talking to each other because everyone was kind of like just put their heads down and was doing their own thing that they got excited about, but there was a real lack of oversight. And apparently, like, one of the executives at Disney saw it and like almost had a heart attack. Well, not had a heart attack, but just was like freaking out because he was like, "Oh no, I've ruined Disney with this. Like, this was my first time supervising something, and it was a complete disaster." So yeah, it sounds like, from what you described as well, yeah, it was a bit of a mess.
I found myself actually throughout this movie, instead of writing down my lists and goods and bads, it actually became more of a train of thought.
Interesting.
So like things that I would just like write, like normally I'd be like, oh, I really like this, or like this scene really works for me, like just things that I really, really liked. But I couldn't really, much beyond that, I really like Princess Eilonwy's design. Mm-hmm. I thought she was an interesting character that was poorly utilized. She was, out of all the characters we meet besides the Horned King, she was the one where I was like, I want to know about her. I want to know what her backstory is. What is she the princess of? What's that little magic
Why
thing
is she here?
Why is she here? Yeah. Exactly. I was like, yo. But she has like a sass about her, an interest about her, a spark that keeps her alive. Whereas Taran was just this like, I'm going to be an adventurer. I don't need to take my medicine. You know what I mean? Like, and I was just like, oh, I don't care about you at all. Henway and the pig, I was like, okay, you just like lose the pig and then keep going. Gurgi, I fucking hate that little thing.
So he's not in my pitch.
He's not in mine either, which is hilarious because he's the crux of this movie.
I know. You kind of need him in the story they have, I found him really annoying.
I found Gurgi really annoying, and then when he like dies at the end, like he throws himself in the cauldron because he actually did have friends. I was like, great, but I don't care. Like, you're saving the world, and it should feel like a sacrifice, but it feels like, oh, thank God, he's not on the screen anymore. And then when they bring him back, I was like, you traded for him.
Like, no,
you traded the Black Cauldron to bring back the most annoying little like dog-looking thing. Like he's like, what if an Ewok was terrible? Like, instead you could have had an awesome sword. Like, just take the sword.
He's like little furry Gollum, but not as interesting or entertaining to watch. He
sounds like Gollum too. Ugh. Anyway, but like I would write things down like, yo, where do I get a pterodactyl as a hench person? Like things like that. Like,
where's my pterodactyl?
Or like the part where Eilonwy is like, oh, I'll help you break out and I'll save you, and then Taran does all the saving.
And then he's
and I was like, why would you do that? I did write that her hair was well animated. They have this argument that's brought out of nowhere. Girls can't be whatever. And I was like, this is dumb. You're dumb. Like, and then there were parts where I was just like, this feels like D&D. It just feels like D&D. They're like, oh, now we have a bard, an adventurer, the girl.
Right.
You know what I mean? The obligatory girl, a fairy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Pet that we forget about, but occasionally it's like, oh yeah, I have a pet.
Yeah. And it's just like, cool. This just feels like somebody was like, let's play D&D.
Yeah, that is totally what it feels like.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go back to the castle that we just escaped from. Okay, let's go.
Let's do that. Yeah. The whole bargain with the witches to get the cauldron, I thought was interesting, but it should have been more interesting because of the dilemma. They need to get the cauldron, but in order to get the cauldron, they need to trade the sword. But they want the cauldron to destroy it with the sword, which they can't get unless they trade the sword. That to me is like, oh, that's really interesting. How are you going to get out of this one?
I thought that's where it was going.
But instead, it's just
that's how I remember it. Yeah.
Instead, they're just like, yeah, here, have this sword. We have the cauldron. Oh, the Black King wants the cauldron, and I guess he has it now. Like,
yeah. It's like, oh, he was following us the whole time. Oh, wow.
Things just happen to characters, not really because of the characters.
No, exactly.
And I also felt like there was supposed to be like maybe this this thing where at the end, I mean, I guess it is like at the end, Taran like realizes the true adventure was the friends he made along the way and not the being a great warrior. But I never felt like there was a theme in here. I never felt like, what am I grabbing onto? What should I have?
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing that I did right that I thought was hilarious was whenever I called it a star sword because it would like flash, and it just reminded me of like the Mario star. Whenever he grabbed the sword and it would start glowing, I'd just hear in my head like, and I'd be like, yeah, fucking get it. Yeah, I don't know. There was weird parts in this movie, like the creeper goblin was kind of compelling in a weird way. Yeah. Because like you're annoying, but then
I just felt sorry for him.
Yeah, he slowly becomes like more compelling than any of the other characters. And then there's like a scene where all the thugs are like in the room drinking beer and watching women.
Yeah.
And then the witches show up and they're like overly sexual, and I was like, this is weird. Like, talk about a tonal shift. Yo, Taran has blood on him at one point. On his mouth, yeah. And
I don't even... Oh, is it like when he falls?
Yeah, when he falls.
Yeah, it's like right near the beginning.
It's weird. It's weird. I'm like... And apparently... I didn't know this, but apparently there's 12 minutes of this movie missing at the very end.
So apparently that was one of the executives went through and just started cutting things out of the movie. Of like animated scenes.
Yeah, and just recut them to try
about 3 minutes of movie. Just
I heard 12 minutes, but okay, 3.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, 12
makes more sense because it feels like there's a lot that's
minutes are missing. Is all we know. Some minutes.
Yeah, I'm glad it was as long as it was, not 12 minutes longer.
Yeah, I had a hard time getting through this movie. I normally am able to get through most of the terrible movies we watch. I had a hard time with this movie because there were so many annoying things. The main character was annoying.
Interesting.
Gurgi was annoying. The goblin thing was annoying. Creeper. And the only character, as I said, who wasn't annoying was Eilonwy, except the fact that she is not really in this movie is annoying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know what's funny? I actually didn't have a hard time. I didn't actually skip parts this time.
Really?
Some movies we watch, I'll actually skip through scenes. I didn't do it with this one because the thing is, even though it's really annoying, it does move along.
It's short too. It's only like barely 90 minutes.
Exactly.
Not even. I think
it's a really short movie.
I think it's like an 80-minute runtime with credits. So
yeah, exactly. Super short.
I had a hard time getting. There were parts where I was like, "Oh fuck, I don't." I watched large swaths of this movie at 1.5 speed.
What does it say about this? My faith in this movie when it got to the point when they were like in the underground ferries and then they started flying? I went, "Oh no, they're gonna start singing." Oh no!
I wanted them to sing.
Happening
I
here.
wanted them to. I wanted this to be a musical because I think Disney has a great tradition of animated musicals. I don't know if it would have worked for this movie, but I think. Yeah, I think
somehow at that point I was like, if they start singing out of nowhere, it will come as no surprise to me.
I don't even get what the fairy part was for.
Well, yeah, that was so that they
find the cauldron.
Get the guy.
Oh yeah, we know where the cauldron
is. Find the cauldron.
It seems so strange to me, where it was just like the Horned King is like, I must find the cauldron, right? And you're like, cool. Yeah. It's like, I will scour the land and find anyone who knows where the cauldron is. And then these 3 losers fall into a hole, and these fairies are like, oh, yeah, we know where the black cauldron is. These 3 old hags have it in these marshes. Meanwhile, the Horned King is like,
ah, yes, of course, the marshes. Why didn't I think to look there?
what?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, do you have any other comments or what worked or didn't work? Because I have a few what didn't work.
No, that's my entire list. What I will do, maybe I'll save it for the end. I'll save it for the end when we finish the podcast. Go on. So.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, you essentially summed it up. I feel like this movie is more style than substance. In that it's it looks cool. There are some things about it where I went, oh, this looks cool. One of the things I thought was weird was whenever there was something scary happening, there was the music would go, ooh. What instrument is that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It sounds like a theremin, but I don't think it was like a theremin. I think it was probably like an orchestra pretending to be a theremin.
Okay.
Oh, the music in this was pretty good, actually.
I thought the music was okay, but there was just those bits where I went, what's with the theremin? That just doesn't fit. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I think my biggest criticisms... So obviously, Gurgi's sacrifice isn't earned. It lacks the emotional impact. He's annoying. The characters are bland and inconsistent. I felt the same way. I felt... So how's her name pronounced? Elanwe?
I pronounced it like Elanwe. Or Elanwe.
Yeah, Elanwe. Okay. So she was interesting because she seems to be someone who's she's taking action, she's doing things, and then she suddenly takes a back seat. And I was like, what happened? She was totally the one running the show, and now you don't care to ask her opinion? Okay. There's a lot of things that were random. Like you said, it feels like a D&D adventure. The minstrel, what did he does nothing to do with anything.
I don't care about him. He has no part in the story.
I think he was supposed to be comedic relief or comic relief, but it wasn't funny. I love this trope of the villains who are set on destroying absolutely everything, that's their goal. Because then what do you do? It's I thought this was interesting because
he didn't want to destroy absolutely everything.
Well, he wanted everyone to worship him, I guess.
No, he just to me it was he wanted to bring his army back so he could rule. He would have an undead army that was unstoppable.
But what was he gonna rule? He's go and kill everybody. Oh, well, who are you gonna rule after that?
Yeah, I mean he's already undead, so maybe he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, well, see, that was my criticism with Rise of Skywalker. Was oh, now we're gonna go and we're gonna destroy the entire galaxy. It's okay, well, what then? Think this through. Yeah. Come on, you're smart.
Then? Yeah, but I feel
what
if
are you
he's
gonna do with that?
If he's undead, maybe actually, I mean, I'm stretching, I'm reaching. But if he's undead, if he kills things, they'll become undead, and then he'll rule over them anyway.
Oh yeah, okay, that's it.
But that's also that's me applying a kind of logic to something that's not explained. I don't even think that's even a reading or an interpretation. That's simply just he's undead. I think it's not even explained, but his army is undead, and if they kill things, those things will die, and then the cauldron will bring them to undeadness. I don't want to say back to life, but undeadness, and then he'll rule over them. So I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I could buy that. But anyway, it's kind of. It's this other, it's the trope of the bad guy king who's just...
The bad guy.
Well, what does he want? And I just find that, as much as I did say I found him an interesting character, if I'm going, yeah, but why?
What's your motivation? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know you want to rule the world, but why?
Yeah.
So the other thing I found with this too, my other big criticism was with fantasy. I always if I'm watching fantasy, I always like the sense that there's a larger world out there than what's contained in this immediate story. That's one of the things with Lord of the Rings. I mean, obviously because he built this entire world, but the things that the movie does really well is it captures, it shows you landmarks from places that existed in the greater lore. So even if you're not familiar with the story,
you see
the films.
You see the Argonath, which is the statue of the two the two great kings of the past, and they just like
on the
paddle through, which is what is actually the Nevis Canyon in New Zealand, but they paddle through the Argonath, and you're like, oh shit, like there's these two ancient kings that they're like, and it doesn't give you context for that. It just says like, hey, there's stuff going on here. There's a world presented to you through landmarks.
Exactly, and so that's something that film series does really well. Is even if you don't know the greater lore, you get the sense watching it that there's more of a world out there than what you're seeing immediately, and that I think is where, for fantasy to really work, is it's got to give you that feeling that there's a greater universe out there beyond just where the characters are immediately inhabiting. And I did not get that feeling watching this. I got the feeling like it was just very immediately contained, and that it's all there, which is just it's kind of dull.
In the actual novels, I think they do go to more detail.
I imagine so. I mean, I the thing is, I didn't actually look up any of it with this. I actually made it a point to not look up any of the stuff from the novels, just so I could try and just come up with my own thing. I have no doubt that the novels have all of that.
They won a bunch of awards.
But like obviously it must have had some kind of some sort of a following, or like had something to it that would be why Disney wanted to turn it into a film. But all that's to say, in the context of this movie, I did not get the feeling that was the case.
Yeah.
Which is strange, because you would think, if you had all this source material, why wouldn't you draw from it? Like, it's all that's already there.
Yeah, it seems to me like
you got to do the work of turning it into a movie. That's certainly not easy, but the fact that none of it, like you talked about with Elanwe, Elanwe. Like, where did she's like, oh, the Horn King captured me, and but why? Like, well, who? Like, are you the princess of this kingdom?
Yeah, she says she's a princess, but like, what kingdom? What happened to your castle? Did he just like show up? Like, where's the rest of your family? What are you the princess of? Like, are you? You know what I mean? Like, she's like, well, the king captured me because he wanted to see if my bauble could help him find the cauldron. What's your bauble? What even is that?
I love how that thing also just kind of like shows up and then is kind of gone.
It's gone the rest of the movie. You're like, is it an object? Is she controlling it? It seems like it's her pet, but then it's just like,
yeah,
it's gone.
I know. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like, when did Legend of Zelda come out? Isn't there a thing in Legend of Zelda that follows you around?
Yeah, but that's in Ocarina of Time, and Ocarina of Time didn't come out until 97.
No, but isn't in Link to the Past would have been after this, I think. I thought Link to the Past had one of those too.
No, Link to the Past. The original Ocarina, or the original Legend of Zelda, did have a fairy but it only healed you. It would just go like, and it looked like a fairy. It didn't look like a ball.
Oh, okay. But in Ocarina of Time, it was a ball.
It looked more like a ball, yeah. Navi.
Right. Okay. It looked kind of like a golden snitch, actually, I think.
That's interesting. They would have come out around the same time, Harry Potter and.
Yeah. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else. Yeah, there was a lot of. It was just a lot of. There was a lot of things that just were not filled in, that were very strange to not consider exploring what some of those things are, because there's obviously some questions inherent in, well, who are you?
Who are you? What's
I also
going on?
love that he's not a farmer. He's an assistant pig keeper,
because that's a real job.
Yeah, exactly.
I did write down one other thing that I wanted to go over again. When he's like trying to trade the sword to the witches, and he's like thinking so hard about it. He's like, yeah, I know what you want. I will trade you this sword. All I could think of in my head was like, hey, let me give you this sword that I filched 20 minutes ago. Like his attachment to the sword feels weird. Like, we know it's super powerful, but he also is just sort of like,
my most prized possession.
This thing that I stole, that I grave robbed from this ancient king 20 minutes back.
Yeah. I also love how she calls him out on it, and he's like, he doesn't need it anymore.
It's true.
Moving along. I mean, it is a good point, but
yeah,
still, like, just, we're not even gonna. We'll just moving along.
Yeah. We should get into pitches. Do you want to start, or would you like me to?
Doesn't matter to me.
I'm actually really proud of this pitch. I think it's pretty good.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay. I think mine's okay. I think mine's okay. I'm just gonna say this. So I had a hard time figuring out how to start with this. So I tried it as an experiment. I blatantly stole this from something.
Okay.
I won't tell you what it is, but I'll see if you can figure out what I stole it is. As soon as you figure it out, just call it out.
Okay.
Okay. So, what's his name? Okay, so Dalbin. In my version, he's like a warrior wizard. And he's living in the woods, and he's living in seclusion, and he's got this pig, Henwig, with him. And the beginning of the movie is him like he's on the run with this pig from the Horn King's army. And he's also got Alonway in his care. So it's the three of them that are basically trying to run away. And he basically says, "Look, I'm gonna hold them off, and you escape with the pig, and you run away with Henwig." And it's a chase scene. Henwig escapes, but Alonway and Dalbin are captured. Anyway, the rest from this point on, we follow the pig, and the pig is on its own, and it's trying to survive, and it's captured at a certain point by bandits, and it ends up in the care of. I see you're laughing.
Well, I'm trying to figure it out.
I'll keep going.
Yeah.
So we follow the pig for a little bit, and then it's kind of told from the pig's perspective up to the point where it's captured and then sold to Taran. Does that have Taran?
Taran? T-A-R-A-N?
Taran?
Yeah,
Taran.
I said Taran.
Anyway, he's sold to Taran's uncle. Anyway, Taran can actually fight in my version, and we actually are introduced to Taran scrapping with another boy from the village, and what happened is this boy was trying to steal chickens from someone else, and so Taran tried to stop him. And the whole point is that we're setting up that Taran actually has a very strong moral compass, but he has a very short temper. But he still wants to be a warrior, but because of his class in society, he'll never be able to become a knight, because to become a knight, you actually have to come from a position of privilege. So he's gonna be a farmer the rest of his life. His uncle buys this pig, but they find that this pig starts causing problems in the farm. Like, the other animals are acting weird when this pig is around. So his uncle says, "You have to take this pig into town to get sold, because this pig is causing trouble." Taran also, by this point, he's kind of developed an attachment to Henwig. He doesn't want Henwig to be slaughtered, so he's not sure what to do with it. And he's on his way to town, and he meets this guy he's attacked by bandits. And the bandits are trying to steal his wallet, and then this guy comes out of the woods and scares the bandits away and rescues Taran, and it's Dalbin. And Dalbin says, like, "Oh, you found my
Aragon.
pig." Like, no, not quite. No.
It sounds very much like Aragon.
Oh, that's so funny. It's interesting. As I'm saying this, I actually think I managed to disguise it enough that it maybe
pretty
not
disguised. If you give it to me, I might be able to. To say
okay,
it,
I'll keep going, and then I'll let you know what I stole it from.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so here now Taran's problem solved. He's like, "Oh, you're the owner," and Dalbin actually says, "Okay, well I'll buy Henwig off of you, so you don't go back to your uncle empty-handed." However, Henwig starts freaking out, and Dalbin pulls him aside and pulls the little bowl of water out, and Henwig shows a vision, and it's Taran's farm is being attacked and destroyed. And Taran runs, but Dalbin is like, "No, you can't," like tries to stop him, but Taran's already run off. Taran gets home and finds that his farm is destroyed and his uncle and aunt have been killed. So now Taran he's now alone, but Dalbin is caught up to him, and Dalbin is like, "You shouldn't have done that, because if they caught you, then they would have known that you have the pig, and they would have found the pig, and you would be dead, and this pig would be dead as well. tell you what, why don't you come along with me? Because at least with me you're safe, and I have to take this pig to someone else, and basically they then have to hire a smuggler named Captain Roy.
Is this just Star Wars?
Yes, it is Star Wars. I stole from Star Wars. Okay, so
as soon as you said smuggler, I was like, "Yo, is this?" Because I started had like inclinations of it being Star Wars, but until you said smuggler, I wasn't sure. But carry on.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So they're basically in the Horn King's kingdom, and they have to get to across the channel to get to the next kingdom over. Because the next kingdom over is, though it's neutral with the Horned King, they're actually there's rumors that they're building an army to fight back the Horned King. So they hire Captain Roy, a smuggler, and they try to get across the channel, but in the course of trying to get across the channel, their boat is caught and they're brought back to the Horn King's palace, but they hide in the boat. They get back to the palace. They find out that Elanwe is in the castle. They go in and rescue Elanwe. But the twist that I did is they go to rescue Elanwe, but they're captured. But Elanwe has figured out how to get out on her own, and so she actually rescues them and helps them escape. And then together they go back across the channel with the pig, and they show up at the king's doorstep and they explain like, oh, this is what's happened. Here's the pig. The Corn King wants this pig because he's trying to find the Black Cauldron. And what's happened is the Horn King actually followed them to, I call him King Charles. They followed him to King Charles. Exactly. So, but now King Charles is in a bind because he's like, well, we were neutral with the Horned King, but now I have to hand you over in order to maintain our diplomatic relationships, or he's going to show up.
Is this just the second part of Star Wars? Is this just Empire Strikes Back?
So it does change a little bit.
It just feels like the king is Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, actually, he totally is. So what happens is Charles imprisons Taran and Elanwe. I forgot to mention Dalbin, when they're trying to escape the Horn's King Palace, is actually killed.
Yeah. Yo, you just throw Gurgi in here as Chewbacca? Actually, that's not a bad idea. So in my version, however, this is where it starts to change a little bit. So King Charles, his son is Prince Leopold, and Prince Leopold has fallen in love with Princess Elanwe. And when he sees that his father has imprisoned Elanwe and that he's going to hand her over to the Horned King, he actually, his father is also sick, so he actually poisons his father. Oh, damn. See, this is new. This is not Star Wars.
Yeah. So this is where I change it. And then Prince Leopold becomes king, and he says like, no, we're actually gonna stand up and we're gonna fight the Horned King. But it's clearly a lost fight because they don't have enough soldiers, and everyone's like, this isn't gonna happen. But they try to put up a fight anyway. Captain Roy has run away by this point. When they imprisoned Elanwe, he actually just bailed. So they do battle with the Horned King, but what happened was Captain Roy actually went and got a fleet of mercenaries and comes back and comes in right, kind of like Han Solo in Star Wars, and shows up right at the last minute and like
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. In my version, we don't actually see the Horned King. He's only mentioned.
Oh.
And the whole idea with mine was that you'd set it up so that there could be like another one after.
Of course.
It. Yeah.
But
that's essentially it was basically Star Wars.
What do you have instead of the exhaust port?
It's just a fleet. A fleet of ships.
I'm just teasing. Like, instead of the exhaust port, it's like a chimney.
I don't know. They do something like in Game of Thrones with the Blackwater, where they have all this stuff that they can use to blow up all the ships in the harbor, and and somehow tip the scale in their favor, something like that. But I basically was like, I wonder what would happen. What if you just took What if you just took the plot from Star Wars and just filled it in with the characters?
That's really interesting.
Because then
it worked.
Because the thing is, at least now you have a story, you have it leading somewhere, and you at least have some sort of backstory for. And so in mine, Elanwe was actually, I neglected to mention this, but Elanwe is actually, it was her king, like her parents were killed, and she's being kept, and she was actually hiding essentially in exile with Dalbin.
Yeah.
Because he was like the warrior, like her protector, essentially. So essentially it's like the Horned King in my version was like he had just sort of come out of nowhere. He's kind of like Sauron, I guess. So we don't actually, and I liked the idea of him being disembodied, and then later in like a later film you actually see the Horned King, so it's more of a reveal instead of like you see him right at the beginning. I think it's better if you kind of hold off on something like that and then later you reveal who this Horned King is. Yeah,
I think it's interesting that I was able to get it, but I do think that like the story works. Like you'd be able to hide it, I think. It took me a while to get there, so.
Yeah, the one thing I actually thought would be interesting to do with this is the bit where it's just the pig. I just recently watched a film called O Hazard Balthazar. Okay. It's a French film from the 60s, and it's told from the point of view of a donkey. And it's really sad. It's actually a very classic film. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that it took me this long to get around to watching it. But it's a film about a donkey and all the people who are its various owners. But all along the way, this donkey is basically abused.
Oh.
And it's really sad because you're like, it's amazing how much sort of emotion you get out of this donkey.
Yeah. But I was just thinking when you said following the donkey, the thing that made me think of it was, in retrospect, I wasn't there yet, but like when it's R2-D2 and C-3PO just wandering the desert from their perspective.
Exactly. That's exactly where I went with that. I just thought, well, if you were to do this, you just take that with the pig and the pig trying to survive on its own and all of its hardships, and then you use that to get into the story of Taran and his uncle, and then them trying to escape. So that you're telling you lead your audience into the story from the perspective of this pig, who's actually has magic powers. We don't know that. We know it's significant because it was with Dalbin. Time to identify.
Exactly.
You've taken time to identify with this pig.
Exactly.
But it's the same technique that they did in Star Wars. So
interesting. I did not do that. I'll get into mine now. So. The story starts out by introducing some men are in a village. They're wandering into a village and they look menacing. They crash into a home of a family and start to lay waste to everything, like just different houses. And they claim that they're searching for, or they're carrying out the orders of the Horned King, who's searching for the Black Cauldron. Anyone who can give them any information will be rewarded, but as further incentive, if nobody gives any information, everything will just be set fire and things will be stolen and burned. So Taran is a young boy. He's like, I'm not afraid of the Horned King. And the thugs are all like, oh, really? You better, shut the fuck up. Because you're a little shit. And they start to basically destroy everything. But because Taran spoke out of turn, they're just like, well, we're going to take you anyway. And his father is like, no, I'll go in his stead. And the thugs are like, okay, the boy will die without anyone to look after him, so fine. And before Taran's father is pulled away, he basically says, like, go to your uncle. So Taran goes to his uncle's, who's a man named Dalbin. So there, Taran is sad that his dad is gone, and he asks Dalbin who the Horned King is and why he wants this Black Cauldron. So Dalbin explains this, but we're getting this through like flashback as well.
Okay.
So while Dalbin is explaining this, we see Taran's father taken before the Horned King. So when Dalbin says the Horned King is an ancient king that was so filled with dark magic that he can't die. Like his magic was so powerful that he can't die. So no one knows how old he is, but for like thousands of years, he's scoured the earth, going from continent to continent, trying to find this Black Cauldron. And he must be once again back in this part of the world. And Taran is like, but why would he need the Black Cauldron? What does the Black Cauldron do? And Dalbin explains the Horned King's magic kept him alive, but did not keep his army alive. It did not keep his things alive. So with the Black Cauldron, this ancient relic said to be forged by a demon, he will be able to bring his army back to life once again. So several years later, Taran is now much older, but he's still living with his uncle Dalbin, and they look after livestock on a farm, but particularly this one pig named Henwin. So when one day Henwin starts to freak out, Dalbin explains that the reason Henwin is special is because she's clairvoyant. Dalbin shows Taran that Henwin must be sensing that something is searching for her, and so he shows her using the magic pool water thing that the Horned King must be searching for Henwin so that he can find the Black Cauldron. So anything that's magical that might be able to find the cauldron, that includes Henwin, the Horned King is now searching for. So later that day, Taran is like, well, I mean, the Horned King and his thugs, like, they killed my father and took him, and like, I bet you I could be a great warrior, and I'm gonna find that cauldron. So he finds a puddle, and he casts the spell, and he knows where the cauldron is. He sees where the cauldron is through Henwin's clairvoyance, and he sees that they're in a place called the Marshes of Morva. And so now he knows where the cauldron is. Taran thinks that, I'll begin searching out where the cauldron is, and I'll destroy it, because he's young and arrogant. Along the way, he's like going along, and he gets captured by some thugs, but he puts up a fight. Like, he's punching them and fighting, and he's got a stick and whatnot, and we can see he's feisty, but he's a little shit. And he's dragged off to this old, decrepit, crumbling castle made of black stone and whatnot. And the Horned King, this is where the Horned King has taken up residence. And here Taran is brought in front of the Horned King, and we see, like, unlike Taran's bravado, he's actually, like, really frightened. He's like, oh, man. The Horned King uses some kind of black magic on Taran, but he basically, what it does is to, like, look into Taran's mind, but he can see that Taran is just mundane. He doesn't know any spells or any magical objects that will help the king find the cauldron. So instead, he's like, I'll just put you in the dungeon. In the dungeon, in this dark part of this crumbling castle, Taran finds the skeleton of his father in the same dungeon that he's staying in. And he's like, oh my god, it's so sad. And he's like, oh, I can't believe it. And like, he's even more angry at the king. But before he can get too upset, the floor opens up, and out steps Elanwe, a princess who has come to the castle in search of something. She explains that her family is the royal family, and long ago they used to own the castle that was here, this crumbling castle, but long since have built a new castle elsewhere, like many generations ago. But the king who had once lived in this castle, her ancestor, was a good king, and he foresaw that evil people would try to use the Black Cauldron for sinister purposes, and so the legend says that he forged a mighty sword to destroy the Black Cauldron. But before he could use it, he was struck down by the Horned King, who wanted to use the Black Cauldron.
Right.
So she's come to the castle to search for this sword. And she's using all the secret passages that her ancestors talk about and anything that she can find to find if the sword is even real. So Taran explains that, this is perfect. I know where the cauldron is, and I'm a great warrior. And Elanwe is like, no, you're not. Otherwise, A, you wouldn't be in the dungeon if you were a great warrior. And B, if you knew where the cauldron was, then the Horned King would have it because you're in his dungeon. And Taran is like, no. The Horned King used this magic on me, but he was looking for an object or spell to find the cauldron. He forgot to see if I already knew where it was, and because Henwin, this is a pig, not an object, it didn't work. And Elanwe is like, oh, that's pretty clever of you. So you're a mighty warrior. Okay. And another prisoner, overhearing this, is another prisoner named Fluter. And he says, I'm a bard and a thief, and I can probably help you find the sword. Like, I'm used to grave robbing and stuff like that. I can probably help you find the sword if you help me escape. And so they're like, okay. And so the three of them start searching. And the three of them go through these old catacombs, and they come across this tomb of a king, and no one's been there in years. And Elanwe is overjoyed because she's like, this must be it. And then then Fluter can like help them overcome some kind of booby trap. I just think that would be, a dope scene to have, right? And Elanwe uses her magic to get past like these, because she comes from a long line of enchanters and wizards. So she uses some of her magic to break through some of the barriers and whatnot, and they get to the stone coffin, and atop the stone coffin is this sword, and Elanwe takes it, and Fluter is like, oh ho ho, I'd like to get a look at that sword, but Elanwe is like, nobody touches the sword. It's the key to defeating the Horned King. and it's my birthright. So I'm the only one. I don't trust anyone with it. So then the three of them are basically trying to escape, and they get spotted. And they're running. And as they're running, Eilonwy drops the sword and is about to get attacked. And she calls to Fluter, and Fluter is like, oh, I want that sword, but I'm a singer, not a fighter. And he bails. He just fucking bails. And Taran is like, yo, what the heck, man? And he picks up the sword, and he's able to defeat all the enemies. And their weapons just sort of break in front of this sword. And we can see he has a little bit of skill, but the sword is just breaking their weapons. And then the two of them escape. Eilonwy and Taran escape. So Eilonwy is like, wow, you defeated all those enemies. You must be this brave warrior. That's crazy. You can carry the sword. Even though it's my birthright, like that sword, you can use it. And we can see she's a little bit like, wow, look at this guy. So as they travel, they could talk and get to know more about each other. Taran doesn't hide his simple upbringing, but he does play up his adventures. So he talks about how he was like it was what happened to his family and how he was brought up by his uncle, and then what happened with his pigs, and he's just a farm boy. But like, he talks up the adventuring part that he's already been on. And Eilonwy is clearly impressed. So we can have a scene of Taran fighting off some more thugs and their weapons break in front of them. And we can also see like Eilonwy uses her magic because she's also a badass. And so upon reaching the marshes of Morva, the pair basically finds this house in the middle of the swamp, and they find a simple black cauldron sitting there plain as day, and an old woman who's been using the cauldron as a regular cauldron, so it's been hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
But when she sees the magic sword, she's like, I know what that sword is, and I know what you're here to do. But then the Horned King shows up. And he basically knew. He's like, I knew that you knew. Of course I knew. I have all this badass black magic. And I knew that if I put you in the dungeon, you'd escape. I didn't know about the princess, but I knew you'd escape. And Eilonwy is like, break the cauldron, Taran. Like, just break the cauldron. And Taran is like, no, I'm going to face the Horned King. I have this sword, and he killed my parents, and all of these terrible things. And so Taran faces off against the king, but the king's magic doesn't even work on the sword. So the king picks up a stick off the ground and out-sword fights Taran easily. And he explains that the sword is only effective against metal. It was designed to break anything metal, including the cauldron. But it doesn't work on wood. It's just a regular sword. And Taran's like, how would you know anything about the sword? And the Horned King laughs and he says, I was the one who forged it.
Oh.
So both Taran and Eilonwy are then captured. And it turns out that the Horned King is actually Eilonwy's ancestor, that king who forged the sword. And he was a great magician and wizard who like passed on his line and all his magic. That's where her magic comes from. And a long time ago, he was a good king, and he used his magic for good, and he was this great wizard, and he forged this sword. But all of the magic made him not age, and so people around him started dying, like first his wife, and then his children, and then his grandchildren.
Right.
And eventually the whole kingdom he had created started crumbling around him, and people didn't recognize him because his body was rotting, but he couldn't die. And he realized that the only way that he could get what he wanted back was to use the cauldron. And so he sealed the sword away. And he began to seek out the cauldron to try and bring back all the things. So he starts using this cauldron, and the castle's like remade using this cauldron, and these like undead skeleton things start to get up, but they're not like zombies or skeletons, they're like half living. Like it's more like a facsimile of life without being necessarily undead. And now in this castle, in this remade dungeon that isn't terrible and not easily escapable because the castle is rebuilt, Eilonwy won't even talk to Taran because she's like, you lied about your sword skill. You lied about being a great warrior. And instead of destroying the cauldron when you had the chance, you chose to be arrogant and trying to defeat the Horned King. And because of that, we lost, and you're not even a warrior. And now there's no way they'll ever defeat the Horned King without the sword. And right as she says that, Fluter shows up, and he's like, you mean this sword? Because he'd snuck in to the Horned King's place, and he saw the sword. He was like, I'm just going to steal a bunch of the Horned King's stuff, because for me as a thief, like, I don't take sides, but if somebody's got a lot of stuff, I'll just steal it and sell it. But when he saw the sword, he was like, oh shit, I know where that sword comes from. Something must have happened to Eilonwy and Taran. And so he repays them by freeing them and giving them the sword. But he's like, I'm not a fighter. I'm out. So this time, Elanwe says that she will destroy the cauldron herself and she won't let Taran touch the sword. So alone, she tries to sneak past the Horned King and destroy the cauldron, but she gets noticed again because she's basically getting near the cauldron. And Taran runs in to try and distract the king, but he's useless. So now we can have this awesome battle of like swords and magic between Elanwe and the Horned King, but of course her magic is no use against him. And so he basically sends her and the sword flying, and he's walking up towards her, and he's like, I'm going to kill you once and for all, you meddlesome child. And Taran picks up the sword and smashes the cauldron, causing it to break and all the undead things to like collapse away and be unmade. So the remade castle begins to like crumble again back to its decrepit form, but it crumbles on top of itself, and its old crumbly walls can't sustain this kind of like domino effect, and it begins to sink into the ground and the surrounding water. And Elanwe and Taran escape with the help of Fluter, and she basically is like, thank you for destroying the cauldron and for saving me. And I know you're not a warrior, but you are a great adventurer, and I do forgive you. And I wouldn't mind going on more adventures. And that's the end.
Nice. Yeah. Hey, excellent. Bravo. That was really good.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't so much about a theme. I mean, there's a theme about arrogance, like the arrogance that this king eventually becomes the thing that he tried to stop other people from becoming. Like he knew the cauldron would be this bad thing, and then winds up seeking it. And then also Taran's own arrogance. Like, so it's basically a theme on arrogance. But for me, it was mostly like I just wanted to have this whole thing where like the Horned King was actually this king of this castle. Yeah. Like he was both the good guy and the bad guy and the legend. But also because they were just in the movie, in the original movie, they're just in this castle. I'm like, whose castle is this? Is it the Horned King's? Like, so exactly. Instead I was like, yo, let's create some lore. Let's have Elanwe, let's give some Elanwe a backstory, but also talk about this castle where she's like, yo, this used to be my family's castle. So, yeah. I really liked that twist specifically with the whole idea of like what turned him evil was seeing everybody else around him die. Yeah. And also just having his own body decay, but him not dying. Yeah. I thought that was really, really creative. Yeah, I don't even think this was
a good way to sort of fit that into a story. Yeah,
I don't think this was my smartest pitch, but I did feel to me like as I was reading it out, I felt like this felt like the most fairy tale-esque thing I think I've ever written. Like it felt like an epic.
I enjoyed listening to it. Yeah. It had a real like it was like a good adventure story.
Exactly. Yeah, that felt. Yeah. Any last minute thoughts about actually? First, before we go into ending, any thoughts about the Black Cauldron?
Well, as you were talking, I realized another thing with the movie. Like, why were they asking the fairies about where the cauldron was when they had Henry? Like, they had the pig that could have told them where the cauldron. Yeah, they never did that. I don't know why.
I tried to bring Henwin out of it as much. Like she's in the beginning, but then after that, I was like, like. The most important characters to me, even Fluter, I was like, Fluter, I think he would be more cool if he just like is a bit more badass and shows up. Like like you say, Han Solo, like he's a bit flaky, but But in the end, he turns out to be a good guy. But to me, this story had to revolve around the Elanwe and Taran characters. Even in mine, I was like, I ship them. I want to build a romance, but it has to be. In the end, it can't be like, oh, they're together. It had to be like. He betrayed her trust, but like they can move forward. So if there was another one, they could move forward. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Before we go into our ending here, there is something I want to do. I looked up quotes from the Horned King, and I'm going to see what happens if I read them as Skeletor. So.
Do it. Yes.
What does he say?
My, what a brave, handsome group. A pig keeper, a scullery maid, and a broken down minstrel.
That's one of the lines he uses, but this is what happens if Skeletor was auditioning for the Horned King.
My, what a brave group! A pig keeper, a scullery maid, and a broken down minstrel!
Or here's another one.
Oh, my soldiers, soon the Black Cauldron will be mine. Its evil power will course through my veins, and I shall make you Cauldron born.
Okay.
Oh, my soldiers! Soon the black cauldron will be mine, and its evil power will course through my veins, and I shall make you cauldron born! Yes!
So, what if Skeletor auditioned for the role of the Horned King?
I want to watch that movie.
Maybe I'll if I'll sit down and have some free time, maybe I'll do that.
Are you the owner of this pig?
Yeah.
Are you the owner of this ocular pig, boy? Yeah.
Where can people find
This had better not be your fault.
Skeletor!
Where can people find you?
On the internet, on www.nathanieldraper.com or letterboxed at DraperNate.
You can find my band Robot Philosopher anywhere you listen to dope music, including right here on YouTube. And you can also subscribe and like and comment and share for more great CineMasters stuff like this episode and other episodes like it. And also lots of other cool shows we've got right here on CineMasters Ultimate Timeline. And we'll catch you later.
Peace.